Have you ever bought a home and completely forgotten to check whether you'd actually have enough water to take a shower? Sounds ridiculous, but it's a real problem. These days, in the U.S., having access to water is starting to feel more like a luxury perk than a lakefront property or a house on a golf course. And what's even more unbelievable is that millions of people continue moving into cities that are drying out little by little, kind of like those last wilted green onions hiding in the back of the fridge. Most folks think the housing market only crashes when interest rates shoot up, but that's not the full story. Another bubble is forming quieter, far more dangerous, and built on a foundation that's literally crumbling because of one issue: the shortage of water. When the taps finally run dry, say goodbye to washing your car, keeping your lawn alive, or taking a dip in the pool. You might even find that selling your house turns into a challenge no one warned you about. In this video, we're going to take a closer look at 10 American cities facing such an intense water crisis that their entire real estate markets are at risk of collapsing, not decades in the future, but right now. And who knows, one of these cities might be the very place you call home. So let's dive in. Starting with the first city where authorities have actually stopped approving new housing developments for a reason that will probably leave you speechless. 10. Miami, the city where sunshine meets salt. Miami may look like a tropical dream, with its glowing beaches, warm breezes, and picture-perfect retirement neighborhoods. But beneath that postcard exterior is a problem no one can afford to ignore. Little by little, the clean freshwater Miami depends on is being replaced by saltwater. It sounds almost unbelievable, yet it's happening right under everyone's feet. Miami and the surrounding region rely heavily on the Biscayne Aquifer, a massive underground reservoir that supplies the area with fresh drinking water. But this aquifer is now being invaded by saltwater creeping inland. As sea levels continue to rise and people keep pumping groundwater, salty ocean water slips into the porous rock that once held pure fresh water, slowly contaminating it. This isn't some distant, hypothetical threat. It's unfolding right now. Specialists have officially labeled the situation a full-scale saltwater intrusion crisis affecting much of South Florida. And if you assume a coastal city should have plenty of water simply because it sits next to the ocean, here's the uncomfortable truth. In Miami, the value of your home increasingly depends on one question: is the water still safe to drink? One incident jolted residents awake. Several coastal neighborhoods had to shut down their freshwater wells after salt concentrations exceeded legal safety limits. In response, engineers scrambled to build underground barriers, pump fresh water back into the aquifer, and update old treatment systems. All of this cost hundreds of millions of dollars, and even the experts admit these measures can only slow the problem, not solve it. A perfect example is the story of Mario and Lillian. They were in their early 60 seconds when they left Michigan in 2021, hoping to settle into a peaceful retirement near the ocean. They found a lovely little house by the shore, complete with a tidy garden, but just 3 years later, the signs of trouble began. Their lawn turned brown, no matter how much they watered it. Their tap water developed a strange odor. Their plumbing started to corrode. When tests finally came back, the results were clear. Salt levels in their water were well above safe limits. Mario said something that many new homeowners in Miami are now realizing. "We never imagined we'd need to spend thousands of dollars on a filtration system in a beachfront house." By the end of 2024, they put their home on the market. 6 months later, not a single buyer had committed. The feedback was brutally simple. Beautiful house, but the water isn't drinkable. Miami once represented the ultimate dream for anyone entering retirement, a place to relax under palm trees and listen to the waves. Now, ironically, those same waves are threatening the very groundwater that makes the city livable. For people over 50 searching for a peaceful place to settle down, buying property in Miami is no longer just about picking a sunlit patio or an ocean breeze. It's a gamble on whether the water supply will still be reliable decades from now. And once that doubt creeps in, everything begins to shake the home's value, your sense of security, and your comfort in the future. So ask yourself honestly, would you risk your savings and possibly your health on a city where every drop of clean water is becoming something to monitor, ration, and worry about? Miami isn't merely the city of sun and salt, It's becoming a real-time example that water shortages aren't a problem for future generations, they're shaping retirement decisions right now. Have you ever thought about spending your later years in Miami? Share your thoughts below. Your perspective might help someone else searching for a truly safe place to call home. Joe? Atlanta, the city held together by wires and worn-out pipes. Atlanta may dazzle visitors with its shimmering skyline and massive sports arenas, but beneath all that shine is a growing mess hiding under the streets. The danger here isn't explosions or natural disasters, it's the aging pipes, corroded lines, and a water system buckling under more demand than it was ever built to handle. If you're thinking about buying property or spending your retirement years in Atlanta, there's a question you can't avoid, even if no one says it out loud. Is the city's water system reliable enough to protect the home you're investing in? Atlanta's current problem began years ago with a water network designed for a much smaller population. But the city has exploded in size, spreading outward with endless new neighborhoods. As people poured in, the strain on the water system multiplied. In 2024, 2 major water mains, one downtown and one in Midtown, burst unexpectedly. Thousands of residents were left with barely any water pressure, and many had to boil whatever water did come out of their taps. This wasn't a freak event, it was another sign of a system falling apart piece by piece. On top of that, the city has nearly $200 million in unpaid water bills, while the budget needed to maintain or replace aging pipelines has been consistently ignored. For anyone over 50 thinking about retirement or real estate investments, this goes way beyond worrying about lawn care or quiet neighborhoods. If the water infrastructure fails, simply living in your home becomes a challenge. And that fear is already rippling through the market. Suburban home prices near Atlanta are beginning to soften, and buyers are raising uncomfortable questions about long-term repair costs and hidden expenses, expensive pumping systems, pipeline replacements, and rising service fees no one likes to talk about. Atlanta's issue isn't a lack of water like in desert regions. The real crisis here is instability. When pipes burst, contamination follows. When contamination spreads, unexpected bills pile up. And when that cycle repeats, buyers stop asking, "How long can I enjoy living here?" and start asking, "How soon will the next disaster hit?" Once that attitude takes root, the entire housing market becomes shaky. So ask yourself this: do you know where your Atlanta home gets its water? Has your neighborhood's system been modernized? Or is it running on pipes from decades ago? This isn't a minor detail, it's a fundamental survival factor for your home and your peace of mind. If you think more people need to understand what's happening beneath Atlanta's shiny exterior, tap the like button or share this with someone who's nearing retirement age. And make sure to subscribe, because in the next section, we're heading to city number 8, where the foundation of the real estate dream is being threatened by something most people never see coming. 8. Austin, Texas, the land of shimmering lakes and deepening drought. Austin, once celebrated as a desert jewel thanks to its blend of live music, natural beauty, and booming tech scene, is now confronting a far more sobering reality. The 2 reservoirs that keep more than 1 million residents supplied with fresh water, Lake Travis and Lake Buchanan, have dropped to levels that are rattling both locals and investors, especially those over 50 looking for a place to retire. Lake Travis, which used to look like an endless bowl of blue water, has slipped to roughly 42% of its normal volume. Lake Buchanan hasn't fared much better, hovering around 55.9% at the beginning of 2025. As conditions worsened, officials were forced to introduce strict watering rules, limiting lawns to a single day of irrigation each week, no exceptions for homes, businesses, or fancy vacation rentals. But don't be fooled into thinking this is just another dry spell. The extreme heat has intensified. Evaporation to the point where the reservoirs are losing water equal to thousands of Olympic-sized pools. And then came the moment that truly woke people up. In July 2025, despite heavy rainfall that should have lifted water levels, Lake Travis continued to fall, dropping another 3 to 3.5 feet over the next several months. That decline proved one thing: even when the skies cooperate, nature can no longer refill what the region is losing. It's the clearest sign yet that Austin has stepped into a new era of persistent, long-term drought. So what does this mean if you're thinking about buying property or settling down here? You're no longer just choosing between scenic lake views, peaceful communities, or attractive tax policies. You're essentially wagering on whether the region's water supply will be dependable for the next 2 or 3 decades. Because when a city's reservoirs start disappearing, it's not only everyday life that changes its real estate market, retirement appeal, and overall livability begin to shift as well. 7. San Antonio, Texas, the city built above a fragile underground world. When people look at San Antonio's charming homes with wide porches and spacious yards, they rarely notice that the city's biggest danger isn't visible at all. It's hidden deep underground. More than 2 million residents depend almost entirely on a single lifeline, the vast Edwards Aquifer. But between 2020 and 2025, that aquifer slipped to the lowest point ever recorded, around 624 feet, which is roughly 33 feet below where it typically sits during the season. That dramatic drop pushed San Antonio into the most extreme emergency level in its history. Officials had no choice but to activate Stage 5, the highest tier of drought restrictions, demanding a nearly 50% reduction in how much water could legally be pumped from the ground. A few rainstorms later offered enough relief to downgrade conditions slightly to Stage 4, but the damage was already done. The aquifer remained dangerously depleted. This situation isn't just about water policies or environmental management. It's a flashing red warning light for anyone thinking about buying property, investing, or retiring in San Antonio. Anyone who settles here is tying their future to a water supply growing more unpredictable with each passing year. Lawn irrigation has been locked to a single day per week. New housing developments are being rejected unless developers can prove they have a secure water source for the next century. And experts are openly cautioning that if conditions worsen, San Antonio may face a drought even more severe than the infamous one that once reshaped Texas history. And here's the part people don't always consider. When an aquifer fails, it's not only the water infrastructure that takes the hit. Property values fall right alongside it. The home you thought would support your retirement could lose value simply because the ground beneath it can no longer provide enough water to sustain the city. With that in mind, let's head to the next location once praised as a model of ideal living, now serving as a stark reminder of what happens when water is no longer guaranteed. 6. Denver, Colorado, high elevation, low water. Denver used to represent the perfect mountain lifestyle dream: mild weather, breathtaking landscapes, and a reliably strong housing market. But there's one crucial detail many people didn't pay close attention to: the region's entire water supply hinges on a single, fragile system. Nearly everything Denver depends on comes from melting snow in the Rocky Mountains and the shrinking Colorado River, and both are disappearing far quicker than scientists once predicted. By 2025, spring snowpack levels hit a historic low, over 20% below what they averaged just a decade prior. Less snow means less runoff, and less runoff means the entire water network is running on fumes. This drop didn't just slow river flow, it immediately started blocking new development. Several suburbs, Aurora, Castle Rock, and Parker, actually paused construction approvals because they couldn't guarantee a long-term water source for the people who would eventually live there. And residents are already feeling the consequences at home. Water bills have been climbing quarter after quarter, and everyday things like maintaining a green lawn have turned into luxuries only a few can afford. Even golf courses, once a symbol of Denver's comfortable, upper-middle-class lifestyle, are struggling to keep their greens alive. If you've ever assumed that living at a high altitude meant you were insulated from environmental problems, Denver is proving the opposite. A city sitting more than 1,600 meters above sea level may enjoy clear mountain views, but it's still blind to the future of its disappearing water supply. So ask yourself, where do you live? Could your city be slipping into the same situation without anyone sounding the alarm yet? Share your thoughts below so more people can understand what's happening before the water crisis arrives at their doorstep. 5. Las Vegas, Nevada, a glowing city built on dry ground. Las Vegas might dazzle the world with its neon glow, crowded casinos, and endless new neighborhoods popping up across the desert, but behind all that sparkle lies a reality far less glamorous. Nearly 90% of the water used in the Las Vegas Valley comes from one place, Lake Mead, the largest reservoir in the United States, and that reservoir is vanishing at an alarming pace. Those bright white bathtub rings circling the lake? aren't just a natural pattern. They're the warning marks of a shrinking water supply. Levels have fallen so dramatically that the city's original pumping station now sits completely above the waterline, forcing Las Vegas to switch to deeper, more expensive pumps just to keep water flowing. Picture this. Jim and Laura, both 57, decide to settle into a beautiful home in North Las Vegas. The price is right, the yard is big, and the golf course is only a short drive away. But a few years into living their dream, they start seeing the cracks. Their watering schedule gets restricted. Their water bill jumps by nearly 45%. Construction around nearby lakeside communities stalls because developers can't secure the water permits they need. And then comes the moment no homeowner wants property values quietly slip as buyers begin asking the one question nobody used to worry about: can this city still guarantee water? The Las Vegas housing market hasn't collapsed, but the early warning signs are there: softening prices, growing concerns, and a shift in how retirees evaluate their long-term plans. For people over 50 who want not just a fun place to live but a secure one, water scarcity isn't just an inconvenience, it's a deal-breaker. A major turning point arrived in early 2025 when state officials announced something chilling. If Lake Mead continues dropping at the same pace, it could hit dead pool by 2027, a level so low that water can no longer flow downstream through the dam. In simple terms, much of the region's water infrastructure would become useless. So, if you're thinking about moving to Las Vegas or one of its booming suburbs, remember, you're not just picking out nice weather or a golf course lifestyle. You're deciding whether the water system can support your daily life for the next 2 or 3 decades. And with that, we move on to the next city, one that's no longer facing a drought, but a full-scale battle over who controls the remaining water. 2. Fresno, California, the valley that's slowly collapsing beneath its own weight. Right in the heart of California's Central Valley, where orchards stretch into the distance and the heat shimmers across endless farmland, a crisis is unfolding that most people never see coming. The land itself is sinking, little by little. And with every inch that drops, property values are quietly sinking right along with it. Think of the Ramirez family. They spent decades working, saving, and planning for a calm, affordable life after turning 50. Buying a house in the suburbs of Fresno felt like the dream they had earned, but only a few years later, their excitement turned into worry. Hairline cracks crept across their walls, parts of the floor began dipping. Their roof repairs piled up faster than expected, and the maintenance costs for their groundwater pump, a necessity in the area, kept rising. The root cause? Fresno's lifeline, groundwater, is being pumped out far faster than nature can replace it. As water is removed, the soil collapses into the empty space left behind, almost like drilling too many holes into a wooden board until it starts to bow and break. Scientists recently found that homes built on these sinking zones have lost anywhere from 2.4% to 5.8% of their market value, tens of thousands of dollars disappearing from a single family's investment. A major turning point came in the summer of 2025. Fresno County's water authorities proposed hiking groundwater extraction fees by 200% overnight. It was a desperate attempt to slow the draining of the aquifer and stop the land from caving in any further. What sets Fresno apart from many other water-stressed cities is this. Here, the danger isn't only a lack of water, it's the literal collapse of the earth beneath people's homes. And that's something buyers over 50 rarely think about when choosing a place to retire. When the ground drops, everything connected to it suffers. Water pipes shift, foundations crack, gardens dip, and the entire neighborhood becomes a structural risk. And when future buyers walk up to a home built on slowly sinking soil, trust evaporates. That's when real estate values begin their slide. So if you're planning to invest or settle into a retirement property in Fresno or the surrounding region, keep this in mind. You're not simply purchasing a house with a nice yard. You're choosing a patch of earth that needs to remain stable for decades. And in Fresno, that land is telling a very clear story. Up next, we'll head to another city where the water crisis has taken on a new form, one shaped not only by nature, but by urban planning decisions that could ripple through generations. 1. Phoenix, Arizona, the desert city that blossomed and is now watching its future evaporate. Phoenix built its reputation on an almost magical promise: that you could carve out a comfortable, sun-soaked life right in the middle of the desert. For decades, people flocked here for warm winters, huge master-planned communities, and neighborhoods where green lawns somehow thrived under a blazing sky. But behind that impressive transformation lies a reality that can no longer be brushed aside. The water that made Phoenix possible is fading. A stunning announcement last year jolted the entire nation. Arizona's leaders revealed that new suburban housing developments around Phoenix would no longer receive approval because the state could not guarantee the legally required 100-year water supply from local groundwater. The news hit the real estate world like a shockwave. Massive builders such as Lennar and Taylor Morrison immediately froze billion-dollar projects. Families living on the outskirts of Phoenix in places like Buckeye, Queen Creek, and Goodyear suddenly found themselves treating water like a fragile, unpredictable resource. Not because they couldn't afford it, but because they no longer knew whether future supplies would hold steady. Even though policymakers are exploring long-term solutions like wastewater recycling and solar-powered desalination, those are plans on paper. The homes that already exist and the people whose future depends on them must grapple with the present danger. Because when the water runs out, nothing else stands. Lawns die, pipes dry, banks hesitate, developers retreat, and the foundation beneath an entire housing market begins to fracture. So, let me ask you something. How would you feel if the city you live in or the one you're thinking about moving to suddenly faced the same fate as Phoenix? You can live without a backyard. You can survive without beach views or friendly neighbors. But life stops the moment the tap stops. These 10 cities we've just walked through aren't just dots on a map. They're caution signs for anyone who owns or hopes to own a home. Because when the final drop disappears, it's not just your faucet that shuts off. It's your plan for retirement, your decades of savings, your sense of security. And the most unsettling part? This crisis doesn't scream. It whispers. It creeps through the plumbing, hides inside policy changes, and quietly reshapes the value of every home it touches. So again, where do you live? And will your city still have water in 20, 30, or 40 years? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective might be the one thing that helps someone else avoid a life-changing mistake.